Hi everybody, my name is Maddie. I'm a junior. I have been part of Fourth Church for about as long as I can remember. I hope you guys are all doing well. I know this is a really weird time that's affecting many people in like a lot of different ways. But I'm here to talk to you and reflect on Luke 24 verses 13 to 35. And so these verses are set on the day of the resurrection, after the crucifixion. And these two disciples are walking along a road to Emmaus. And they're still grieving the loss of Jesus. And as they're walking along, they meet this traveler. Now, this traveler turns out to be Jesus, but they can't recognize him. So, Jesus begins to talk to them. And he even asks them about himself. And so they begin to talk. They talk about, their grief about the crucifixion. They talk about how they really hoped and believed that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And this is when they go on to say that they had heard about the empty tomb from the other disciples and Mary, but they still struggle with believing it, with really believing the resurrection. And so Jesus calls them out. He says that they are foolish and that they are slow of heart to believe. And this is when he begins to talk to them about the scriptures. So they all reach Emmaus, but Jesus, as the disguised traveler, wants to move on and continue walking. But the disciples then, they make a strange decision. They call him back and they say, "Stay with us. It's getting late. Have a meal with us. Stay with us overnight." And so Jesus says yes, and is invited over. And so while Jesus is staying with the disciples, he blesses and he breaks the bread. And this is the act that allows them to recognize that it was Jesus with them all along. Their eyes are opened, and once this happens, he vanishes, disappears, he's gone. So this is when they say this really impactful and kind of cool line. They say, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" And they get up, regardless of the time. Once they had recognized Jesus, and they head straight to Jerusalem, where they spread the word to the other disciples and to the public that Christ has risen. So the disciples have had this crazy day, full of ups and downs and a ton of uncertainty. And I feel like that is something that we can really relate to now. It is a super weird time. People are losing their jobs, schools are closed, we have to social distance, which means we can't see our friends as often as we normally do. We can see them online, but it's really not the same as that sort of physical contact. Most of our daily lives are completely turned around with quarantine and social distancing for safety. And so in such a troubling and weird time, the big question is, how do we recognize Jesus? The disciples were in an uncertain situation and having trouble with their belief and their faith. How do we stay faithful, and how do we recognize Jesus in such an uncertain time like this? So let's look at what the disciples did. They were kind and they showed hospitality. They invited a total stranger who they had just met on the road into their house. Doing this, they opened themselves up and they made themselves vulnerable. The stranger could rob them, but they invite him over anyway, and they're kind. I think that it is super important to be kind and considerate anytime. But Corona is affecting everyone in a multitude of ways, and you don't know what other people are going through. So I guess be kind, help out when you can. And then another way I would say that we can really recognize Jesus is, I've always been able to recognize him in my connection with others. To talk to my friends and my family and see how they empower me and help me, and how I learn from them, how I grow from them. The examples that Jesus sets, and then the examples that everyone around me sets through him. I recognize really the stability in my connections with people during this time when stability is really hard to come by. And I'm just so thankful for it. I really don't know God's plan in any of this. I'm having a hard time really recognizing Jesus when everything is really up in the air, and when it's hard to know what will happen. It's hard to plan for anything. But I am thankful for a lot of things that I've recognized that. And these things remind me that there is a plan. I'm really thankful and grateful that we have technology. I grew up with it, but it's hard to remember that it wasn't always there. And I think in another time, we wouldn't be able to contact people as easily. We wouldn't be able to stay in touch. But that's really helped with online school, online classes, meetings, allowing people to keep working, and me being able to see my friends through FaceTime and Zoom, and besides just texting them. It gives me online school, which, online school, nobody really likes homework, but it allows me to appreciate all that my teachers are doing for me, and how hard they're trying to give some sort of normal school when it's really hard to do so. I really appreciate the medical system because we have such dedicated healthcare professionals, and it is a system that allows people to be treated and saved. We can't save everyone, which is a really hard fact to accept, but if this was the 14th century, we'd have another plague. So I guess this is a reminder to look for the little things, to be thankful for, and to be kind, and to recognize Jesus like the disciples did, even when it is a hard time to see him. So yeah, I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy and happy. I guess that's it. Goodbye.